Okay, welcome to the Gentle Art Podcast with Gene Dunn. Today we have the privilege of having Kyoshi Thomas Clifford back for our ongoing series, discussing the 20 precepts of Master Gichin Funakoshi. Welcome to the podcast, Tom.
Thank you. Glad to be here again.
I know it's a long drive here, and you gave up some family obligations to be here. We really appreciate it.
There's no place else I'd rather be.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you. So we were discussing which precept we'd like to kind of delve into today, and I think it's best that we talk about precept number 9. It will take your entire life to learn karate. There is no limit. And before the show, we were discussing, or I was kind of chatting with you about, like, I feel as though this concept of a lifetime of martial arts practice may be very foreign to new students coming in, and very foreign to people in general these days.
Yes.
I always want to preface these kinds of points by saying, like, I'm certainly not anti social media, and I'm certainly not I'm not a conspiracist, though I do note for myself that my own attention span has been
reduced.
Kinda.
Yeah.
I won't spend a lot of time on long form conversations or anything like that. Meaning like a 3-hour podcast, or, like, I'll do audiobooks while I'm, say, running the dog.
Yeah.
And that's about an hour. But like, in terms of my social media engagement, it's short. And I think that is having an impact on my own attention span. I just have concerns about how that is affecting the consciousness of a student in the martial arts, specifically a new student coming in. Like, what are the expectations? Where do we need to focus? And I'll tell you why it's so important to me, is because the major lessons that I'm learning, or I've learned, are recent.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, I've been learning important lessons the whole time.
Yes.
But they certainly feel much more
intense, rich.
Yeah, rich, with volume,
mm-hmm.
with a lot of, like,
depth.
So it's important to me that people are engaging with the practice long enough that they're getting these benefits or experiencing them. The richness of the lessons have become more amplified.
Mm-hmm.
They've really gotten bigger and better, and that's my concern, that a lot of us don't stay around long enough to appreciate these lessons, or appreciate the real beauty of the martial arts and the practice that it gives our lives.
Yeah. I think, there's a bunch of things at play. One thing is time scarcity. There's a lot of time scarcity, right now. I think that there's a lot of hurry up and wait. There's this, like, urgency addiction. And I think there's a belief, and I call it a belief because it's not necessarily true, but people believe it's true, that they don't have enough time. And if they don't have enough time, the idea of committing themselves to something, like, for a lifetime is extraordinarily scary. I don't think it's attractive and appealing. I don't think there's an allure to, I want to find something that's going to last me the rest of my life. Now, you think that would be an allure, but I don't think it is. I think people are reluctant to make that kind of a decision.
Uh-huh.
So I wholeheartedly agree with you that.
Well, I mean, it just seems so paradoxical that, like, you have this time scarcity, and you don't want to give a serious practice some consideration, and that's the thing that helps you get past this belief of time scarcity.
Yes.
It's like you give up on the exact thing that you need to get past the thing that's limiting you.
Yeah. So, we call that, I'd say that's a dilemma. I think one of the ways to try to mitigate that is we've got to make each lesson as compelling as possible.
Right.
They say, like, well, how do we make the lesson compelling? I think you and I share the belief that the lesson's already compelling. Like, we don't have to add to it. We add to it, we kind of subtract. The lesson is what it is. We need not ornament what already exists in the curriculum. However, as you say, the lessons have gotten more rich and have a greater depth and texture for you as a practitioner, it probably has informed your teaching.
This is, if I'm going to be completely honest, yesterday I taught a lesson that I was very happy with.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, I tried to bring in this idea that you and I talk about,
Mm-hmm.
that the way to love something is to be in love with it.
Mm-hmm.
That it doesn't work the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, if you're waiting for the martial arts to come around and love you, it's not happening. It's not going to show up to your house with a dozen roses.
Yes.
But the way that you're going to love it is by being in love with it.
Yeah. And then you get love the feeling, just like this guy.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people, this guy shows up and people say, like, never, no, not keep him off the couch, never gonna, like, you're gonna feed. And then they one day open up a can of food and they pour some water and they take him for a walk and then he's sleeping in the bed.
Right.
So because they've fallen in love through an effort of nurture.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, because they initiated the service and they provided love in the form of time and attention, they fell in love. So similar in the martial arts is you have to.
Well, so I use my divorce with Lori
Mm-hmm.
as an example. And I say, like, she was a wonderful woman. And I brought this up on the podcast before,
Mm-hmm.
That I was waiting for her to be something different
Mm-hmm.
in order for me to love her fully.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that got me divorced.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that destroyed my relationship. Rather than love being a verb, like just acting with love and engaging in my relationship in that way, I was waiting for something to love me.
Yes.
And so I use that story, and I think it's like a rich story.
Yes, it is.
I think it's very appropriate.
Yeah, it's a relevant story.
It's a relevant story.
Yeah, some people are going to hear that and like roll their eyes,
but so then to the point, right?
I have sympathy. I have sympathy for them. Like those,
those
who hear that and roll their eyes.
Sure.
Like, they've probably not fallen in love with either a person or a thing.
Yeah.
But there's hope.
Yeah. My concern is that, like, I took away from the lesson. In an inquiry about that, like, and to your point, like, we don't need to add or ornament the lesson any more than it doesn't need it. It takes away from it. So, I find it so interesting that the catchphrase for jiu-jitsu and for martial arts really is that it's a way of life.
Certainly is a way of life.
And we use jiu-jitsu or we use martial arts as a lens in which to operate in our lives from, like, these principles.
Our bias is practice properly. Practice properly, it provides us with that. Practice improperly, it becomes an escape. It becomes a place to hide. It becomes a perversion. But I think practiced properly, and look, I know I'm not the ultimate judge to decide what properly means, but I believe that properly means that it's going to greatly, dramatically, extraordinarily improve the quality of your life outside of the training. And that
but
just
you got to be training.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so
Yeah,
So
it can't just be a philosophical understanding. It's got to be a function of a regular practice.
a regular physical practice.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And how physical? As physically as you're capable of making it. That's
Right.
how physical.
Right.
So that's going to change. But the constant is you make it as rigorous and as physical as you can without doing harm, keeping it developmental rather than degenerative. But I think there's got to be an intensity to it, an intention to it.
Tom, I want to ask you, like, in this light, like, maybe it's helpful to discuss what's one of the very rich lessons that you've gotten from a lifetime of martial arts practice.
So,
like, do you share the same sentiment that
I
now
do.
things are becoming more rich and
yeah.
Well, what's one thing that may inspire others?
So I'm going to try to work off of what you've already introduced, which is like, lust, love, and like. So, and anyone who's listening, if you've not experienced those three, I'm sorry. But,
I keep you brought this up before, right?
Sure.
And I just keep thinking about Howard Stern. Like Howard, one of the best episodes I ever listened to Howard Stern. He had Lionel Richie on, and he says, "I love your songs." And he said, I'm paraphrasing a bit, but he said, "Anyone who doesn't love your songs has never been in love."
Yeah.
They just don't like. It speaks right to that.
I'd also say this. I also say that when you have your heart ripped out of your chest, and when a relationship goes south, you can listen to death metal, and somehow it's a love song. Yeah. So but so let's take martial arts, like, in our first introduction to it.
So love, lust,
I had a lust for it before I even had the opportunity to study it formally. I mean, I wanted to study it formally. I craved it. And I did from as early as I can remember. I wanted to do martial arts. I saw a little bit on TV.
Age?
As early as I can remember. I mean, so my oldest brother, he kind of dabbled. He had not only did he have a set of nunchucks that he crafted,
I know how to make them. I still know how to. I still remember how to make them.
He actually had a pair. He had like an octagonal pair with traditional cord.
Yeah.
So it was like it was level up. And then just seeing as pathetic as the physical expression was, I got to tell you, I found like David Carradine's Kung Fu series compelling.
Buddy.
But I can even remember Captain Kirk, like pulling off a
judo
couple
chop.
moves. Yeah.
And a hip throw.
And So as early as I can remember, it's something that I really wanted to do. And but I didn't get formal instruction until I was really my first instructor, the person who I consider my first teacher, Master Ruben Pratt. That was like my formal foray. 12 years old, 11, 12, just turning 12. But again, it was this lust, and that lust has never left me. That's what I can say that it's not left me. In fact, the lust has grown. Like I still lust.
I
all
feel the
things
exact same way, man.
Yeah. But I love it, and I like it. I like it. You see, like there are people who I love.
What do you love about the martial arts?
Just about everything. Just about everything. When I say I love it, it's both love. I try to love it by nurturing it, by treating it the way I think it deserves to be treated, by caring for it. I care for my martial arts. I care for
your
training.
Own individual practice?
Yeah, I care for the practice.
But you also care for the
instructionally. I care for the dojo. I care for the
its propagation, and it's like
absolutely, yeah. I care for it all around. So that's love the verb, but through that there's love the feeling. I just love it, but I also like it, and the way I would describe that as there are people in my life who I love dearly. I just don't like them.
Thanks.
Well,
he's looking
yeah.
straight at me,
Yeah,
but he's
yeah.
like deadpanning
Yeah,
me.
but you're not one of them. But
I neither love you nor like you.
Not true. But so again,
That's why it's funny, you know.
it is funny. It is funny. But I like to look at it that way.
Yeah.
And people's, again, it's like I wouldn't look at it that way. Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Maybe someday you will.
Right.
But so then we go back to like what is. So you asked the question is like, what is one of the most valuable lessons? Like that's one of the most valuable lessons is, I include in that the idea of the 6 human needs that Anthony Robbins has made so popular. But my understanding is they were founded in Freudian psychoanalysis, that Freud he identified these 6 needs. We have certainty and variety, or you could say order and chaos. Then we have fitting in and standing out, and we have growth and contribution. So if you look at those, if you were to list them vertically, you have, certainty and variety. They seem like they're opposites, but they're complementary. They're not contradictory, they're complementary. Then you have fitting in and standing out. Again, someone would look at that and go, they're polar opposite, but I believe them to be complementary. And then you have growth and contribution. Again, like, or get and give. They're not mutually exclusive. They overlap. They're complementary. And you gotta check all 6 boxes. And in any relationship with people, places, or things, if you expect that relationship to endure, all 6 boxes need to be checked. Some people say 4 out of 6. I think 6 out of 6. And for me, the martial arts checks all those boxes always.
Always.
Always. Always. In every second.
Where do you think the disconnect is, Tom?
Well, I'll say this is that one of the responsibilities of an instructor is to get people to nab all 6 of those experiences when they're happening. When I say NAB, it's an acronym for notice, appreciate, and believe. And I think that's one of the talents that I see in, this is not a mutual admiration club. I'm not patting you on the back falsely, but
Don't.
I'm
Please.
not, but you provide an extraordinary level of instruction because you're adept at this idea of NAB. You get people to notice, appreciate, and believe things that they otherwise may not have. In other words, you indicate to them what is happening while it's happening. You get them to notice it, to appreciate it, and the consequence is to believe it. You don't make them believe it, but I think they believe it because it's compelling. So if you take any given training session on any given day, there's always going to be certainty and variety. There's always going to be order and chaos, always. There's always going to be fitting in and standing out. There'll always be growth and always be opportunity for contribution. But if those things go unnoticed and unappreciated, they may as well not happen.
Mm-hmm.
So again, let's go back to a relationship with a person. You'd be hard-pressed to find a person who you couldn't experience certainty and variety, fitting in, standing out, growth and contribution with. Just again, you're not aware, if you don't bring those things to your conscious awareness, they may as well not happen. So you said, like, what are some of the most compelling lessons? That would be one. That would be one, is that am I not paying attention because it's boring, or is it boring because I'm not paying attention? Because if I'm paying attention, it's a lot of things.
Can't be boring.
Yeah, boring's not one of them.
Yeah.
But we go into microshock because we're weak, because it's a defense mechanism. It's part of who and what we are as human beings. And we're extremely skilled in shutting down.
Yeah.
And going numb.
Getting in a little nap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this lower level of consciousness. So we miss it.
It happens to me all the time.
Happens to me all the time. So we miss it. Now it doesn't happen to you all the time. It happens to you some of the time.
I'll tell you when it happens. When I'm facing something that's very challenging for me.
Sure. It's because it's an escape.
Confronting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's non-confrontation.
That's right.
And you could pat yourself on the back and say, see, I'm practicing. Yeah, but actually,
confrontation.
Yeah. But actually, what would be more appropriate is confrontation.
Yeah. I'm practicing narcolepsy.
Sure. So we go back to like martial arts for life. It's I've attended some meetings with friends of mine, and they talk about it's one day at a time.
Right.
And I think same with the martial arts, but we're not trying to endure it. We adore it. See, if you're going to endure it, you're in trouble. Like it might not be the right path. See, he who is good with a hammer thinks everything is a nail.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Like, I would like to believe that everyone in the world ought to be doing the martial arts, and martial artists ought to be running the world, and the world would be a better place. But the guys who play chess think that too.
Right.
And so do the guys playing pickleball. There's a group right now talking about, they just finished pickleball, and they're talking about how much
they're reading 20 precepts of pickleball.
Yeah, and how much better of a world it would be if everybody just got with the program.
Pickleball for life.
Yep, get your paddle. So I don't want to be so presumptuous to think that it's this like cure-all, it's a panacea.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I think there's immeasurable value to a daily practice.
Sure.
And but if you're only going to endure it and not adore it, it's a problem. It's not unlike. See, my kids are required to learn how to swim, because if they don't, they'll end up floating.
Yeah,
well, they'll float. They'll float after a while.
Yeah.
But that's not the outcome I'm after.
That's
I want
right.
them to. So the way I try to approach it is, it's either a recreational pursuit or a responsibility. It could be both. But if you're not interested in swimming recreationally, that's okay with me. Like, good luck with that, by the way, because, going to the pool is like going to the dojo. Like, I don't want to go. Try getting the kids out of the pool.
Right.
See, like they don't want to go, but it's a lot more difficult getting them to leave than it is getting them to go. We have to remind ourselves of that, right? So going to the dojo, learning how to swim and learning how to defend yourself to some degree, to protect yourself.
This is where I think it diverges from a lot of other activities, because there are so many properties about it that help transcend a lot of things. I believe that other activities don't. They can approach it. They can. But it's not the same.
Yeah, we have a strong bias. And I'm not disagreeing with you.
Sure.
And I'm not trying to play devil's advocate, because I don't need to play devil's advocate. Like, sometimes I think I am the devil. So I don't need to.
You don't need to advocate for yourself?
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Listen, I'm sitting.
No, go ahead. Well, we have an extreme bias. I agree with you, but we do have an extreme bias. I would say that hard to argue that martial arts isn't primal. It's hard to argue. Like, why we're here? We're here because somewhere along the line, someone in our gene line knew how to swing a sword or a club or both.
Or shoot an arrow.
Yeah, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
We wouldn't
carve
be
a
here.
knife.
So, yeah, it's primal. It's primal. Like, I don't know that chess is primal. But I do know that chess is a martial art. Chess is a martial art. It's a martial art you play on a board.
Right.
It's a martial art game. It's a war game. That's what chess is, which is primal. So I do think that paradigmatically, martial arts affords us with a lens through which to see the world that has a little bit more universal value to it than a lot of other endeavors.
I'm sitting here thinking about a conversation I had with John Danaher probably 15 plus years ago. And I said to John, like, how long do you think he can go? Like, how long do you think he can actually do it? And I think he had said, like, he's seen Japanese judoka like train till the mid 60s or 60, I think was the time. And at the time I said, yeah, like that seems reasonable.
Yeah, and
That's,
here we are.
Here we are. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at it and going like, I'm not even close to stopping. I have no, I don't see an end date. I don't see an end day. You know, it just, and so, you know, you have any thoughts about that notion? Like, I know that there are some people in the practice that are maturing.
Yes.
And maybe they're seeing an end date, or you know, I try to like really bridge this gap by using one of the 6 human needs. Like, really, at a certain point, it's about contribution.
Yes.
You know, our dignity, our grace, all of that. It's about what we're giving, and
no doubt,
and that ensures our continued progress.
Yeah.
And so, do you have any thoughts about a practitioner that's maturing and that may be going like?
I have a whole bunch of thoughts about practitioners that, you know,
Yeah, well,
maturing at least physically. I could tell you that I'm preoccupied with the physical maturity that I'm experiencing right now, and what I mean by that is like the body's breaking down. The body is breaking down. Like, I'm waiting for my intellectual and psychological and emotional maturity to catch up.
That's already broken down, bro.
I know. Yeah, well, I don't think I don't.
It never built up to get broken down, right?
Yes. It hasn't developed yet. It hasn't developed yet. That's the big problem. But yeah, like the body breaks down. Like that's so. Like here's a good way to. I think we can approach this way. This is a good way to look at it. Is this is how the story ends. Like, we're all gonna die. Right? That's how the story ends. We're all gonna die. In the meantime, like before that happens, there's a lot to do. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to accomplish. There's a lot to achieve. There's a lot to experience. There's a lot to enjoy. So I think that another good way to look at it is, certainly we want to glean all the value that we possibly can from the training. We certainly want students to experience the same thing. Our classmates, our junior classmates, because I know we're both martial arts instructors professionally, but I also know we both look at our students as our classmates, that we're senior to them. We're senior practitioners. They're junior practitioners. We've been doing it wrong longer than they have. I think that's a good way to look at it. We've been doing it less than perfectly longer than they have. One of the rough things to reconcile is that back when we coulda, woulda, shoulda done it all, we didn't understand it. And now that we're starting to understand it, we can't do it all. It's that's life. That's life. Like, you know, I bring up Cuss sometimes because I just love Mike Tyson so much.
Right.
I just love him, the fighter.
Right.
The human being. Not the guy who made some really bad errors early on.
Right.
But I just love Tyson, and you know,
he's certainly a fascinating guy.
Fascinating guy. But like, Cuss couldn't do what he understood. See, like he understood it, but he couldn't do it. So, you know, him together with Mike Tyson, you had this guy who understood it inside out, upside down, and backwards, but he didn't have the physical ability to get it done, but Tyson did. So Tyson, like, here he is this many years later, I would argue that he knows infinitely more about the art of boxing today than he did. And I was going to talk about was it Jake Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't include that. I wouldn't pretend it didn't happen either, but Mike Tyson's performance in that exhibition, in that form of entertainment, is not indicative of his understanding of boxing today. I believe that as a person, as a boxer, as a fighter, he knows infinitely more than he did when he was in his prime.
You know, I think I Yeah, Friday night is Randori at the dojo, and there's a younger guy who wrestles very well. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's very good, and I train with him. I try to give him. I tell him, I'm going to give you my best while I still can.
Yes.
That's my tagline.
Sure.
I want to give you everything I got while I still can. And he's very appreciative. He's really just he gets a lot of things. He's naturally very smart. And we trained, and I said to him at the end of the training, at the end of the class, I says, in some ways I feel I'm so much better than I've ever been at jiu-jitsu. And in some ways, it's more challenging, and that's the place I'm kind of like speaking to. Like, I wonder to myself, in this Mike Tyson analogy, does he have the experience himself that he's better than he ever was, even whether he won or lost? And I don't think the Jake Paul fight is exactly the best, because we don't know.
No, it's ludicrous.
If the work was in,
I only bother to bring it up.
I know you do. It's a great point.
Yeah.
But I do think that, like, I have concerns that folks that are maturing in the practice, the specter of the end date, and not necessarily death. I think you and I probably have resolved ourselves that we'd like to pass on the mat.
Sure.
It'd be a great, victory for us.
Sure.
But like, maybe they're seeing the end date, and it's like shrouding or covering their ability to feel like there are still great experiences other than helping another person, exactly like, oh, I'm going to teach this person the down block. Like that, yes, that is part of it. And that's what I try to state to the students. But there is progress in our own physical practice as well. And that's possible.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to the Gentle Art Podcast. Please share, rate, and review. And if you have any questions or you'd like to reach out, please contact us at the GentleArtPodcast@gmail.com, or contact us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or thegentleartpodcast.com.